Joining us now to talk more about the American political response and the global political response to the latest out in the Middle East is Dr. Trita Parsi with the Quincy Institute. Always great to see you, sir.
Likewise.
So the response that we've gotten from the Biden administration is to the killing of Nasrallah and the escalation with regard to Israel and Lebanon is incredibly predictable. We've seen this many times before. You can put this up on the screen, A7. Biden says he's very upset. Biden told confidants in New York this week he was livid at Netanyahu, did not believe the Israeli leader wanted to reach peace. Oh, really? You don't. He was frustrated about how often Netanyahu had humiliated Blinken and the president himself. I mean, what can we even say about these reports at this point, Dr. Parsi?
I don't think we've ever seen a strategy of being politically pathetic being seen as a winning political strategy in an election season. But that seems to exactly be what the administration is doing. Bottom line is, Biden has not been trying to stop this, because while he says that he's trying to stop it, while he says that he wants to avoid an escalation, he has been providing Israel with the weapons, with the money, with the political protection, with the diplomatic protection, to be able to do exactly what Biden says that he does not want to see Israel doing. So you can't really claim that you're trying to prevent someone from doing something while you are simultaneously providing him or her with the means to do it. And at this point, the credibility of the United States is, in shatters, because after having said that they've been working night and day around the clock to secure a ceasefire and have absolutely nothing to show for it, except a couple of leaks about how frustrated they are, it is the Biden administration itself that has revealed its weakness.
Well, let's talk about, you were in New York last week as people from all over the world were gathering for the United Nations General Assembly. And Biden's posture on this doesn't just obviously affect him domestically, it affects the United States diplomatically, geopolitically. So what were you able to pick up on, even from just what you've seen over the last few days, about how Biden's handling of Netanyahu ordering the strike from his hotel room in New York City when he was there for the UN General Assembly? How has that, do you think, affected the United States and just in the last few days?
I think one of the things, there were many important things that were seen at the UN in the last couple of days. One is the degree to which Israel is completely isolated outside of the West, but also within the European Union itself, in which numerous European leaders came out with very, very strong statements. Now, I know, of course, the strong statements is not necessarily what changes the course of history, but it is important to note that this isolation is the outcome of Israel's own actions and its complete disregard for international law. So yes, Israel has won numerous military victories in the past. It has nevertheless led to this situation with October 7th, in which Israel, according to itself, cannot live in peace with its neighbors. So just winning military victories clearly is not the pathway alone to be able to reach a peace and security for the long term for Israel. But that lesson seems to have been completely lost. And the other thing I think that is really crucial is to see the moral plunge on the Western side. Because take a look at how the United States reacted under the Bush Jr. Administration when the Israelis assassinated Sheikh Yassin, who was the former head of Hamas, in 2004. 7 people were killed, civilians were killed in that strike. And the United States at the time heavily criticized and even condemned the Israeli strike. Today, you have a situation in which Nasrallah is killed with several hundred others alongside him, civilians. And there is not a word about that coming from the Biden administration. The Bush Jr. administration seems to have a stronger moral fiber in this sense than what the Biden administration does. This is noted on the international scene because simultaneously, while this is taking place, the Biden administration is talking a big game about the rules-based international order, talking about the importance of defending Ukraine, because otherwise, what good is international law if superpowers can break it? So that the hypocrisy, the double standards are just so blatant. It was a very depressed atmosphere at the UN, because when the United States behaves like this, with this level of hypocrisy, with this level of double standards, it paves the way for everyone else to do so as well. And that will bring about a much more anarchic and chaotic situation internationally than we have seen in the past.
What do you think are the likely possible outcomes next? Where does the world go from here? What do you see as the most likely scenarios?
Well, I think that in the immediate term is, of course, going to be determined with what Israel decides to do in terms of a land invasion of Lebanon. That seems extremely likely. The Israelis believe that they have Hezbollah in a very dire situation, which is true. And instead of allowing Hezbollah the time to regroup, rebalance itself, Israel feels that it needs to go in right now. The problem, of course, is that if Israel does this, it will very likely at some point lead to a situation in which the Iranians will conclude that Israel is not going to stop at Israel in Lebanon. It will continue. It will go on all the way to try to rebalance the situation in the region by also significantly degrading Iran. If the Iranians come to that conclusion, then the rational response from their standpoint likely will be to act sooner rather than later. And then we will have the very large regional war that Biden claims that he's been trying to prevent for the last 11 months.
And, we heard, obviously, Netanyahu talk about how the goal of the post-October 7th conflict would be to eliminate Hamas. And as you just mentioned, this has clearly been a significant blow to Hezbollah just in the last couple of weeks. How significant has it been? Because I think there's still an open question about how significantly Hamas has been damaged over the course of the last year. Krystal and I were talking earlier about reconstitution of Hamas in areas like Jabalia. What do you make of how significant this is to Hezbollah in the near term and in the long term?
I think in some ways the blow to Hezbollah may actually have been worse than the blow to Hamas because of the fact that the Israelis managed to crack the communication system of Hezbollah. That makes it much more difficult for them to be able to regroup. They also clearly know that there are plenty of Israeli intelligence assets inside of Hezbollah itself. They've not been able to identify them or root them out. That also makes it very difficult for them to be able to regroup. So that is a blow that Hezbollah has suffered. That is not a military blow. It's an intelligence blow that is not necessarily the same as Hamas has suffered. At the end of the day, Sinwar is still there after 11 months. And the Hamas operatives have been using non-electronic communication systems for quite some time, precisely because of the awareness of how dangerous it would be for them if Israel managed to crack it. Having said that, I do also want to say another thing. There's stories going out there about how this was a major intelligence coup for Israel, and this is why they managed to get Hezbollah, the Hezbollah leader. Without a doubt, Israel has scored some significant intelligence coup, including the pager bombings. What is not being said, however, is that they actually already had 2 or 3 opportunities to take out Nasrallah back in 2006, and they failed. They bombed, but he survived. The difference this time around is that they dropped 85 bombs, 2,000-pound bombs. It is not an improved communications or intelligence operation. They knew in the past where he was, but they were not given the leeway, the carte blanche from the United States to drop 85 2,000-pound bombs on a residential neighborhood to kill everyone there, including Nasrallah. That's the difference.
Dr. Parsi, I also wanted to ask you about the treatment of the American citizens who are in the region. If we can put A6 up on the screen. So, quickly after October 7th, the State Department began booking charter flights for Americans who wanted to leave Israel. And that contrasts quite significantly with the treatment here, where the State Department has said, hey, if you want to leave Lebanon, where you might get bombed with, U.S. supplied 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs, book your own flight and good luck. And obviously, many of these flights are being canceled. They cost thousands and thousands of dollars, et cetera. So just an extraordinary discrepancy between our treatment of our own citizens based on whether they are in Israel versus in Lebanon.
Absolutely. And this is coming at a time in which the Harris campaign knows very well that it needs to do some outreach, build some bridges to the Arab and Muslim communities. And it seems, at least in the last couple of weeks, that they have done absolutely nothing. And in fact, even the most simplest of things, making sure that American citizens are finding a way to get out of a war zone, seems to be a bridge too far for them to do, despite the very crucial impact they could have on the elections. This is putting us truly at a loss. I was speaking to a diplomat from a South American country last night who also has a large number of citizens in Lebanon, and they're doing everything they can right now to make sure that all of them can get out safely. And they were stunned as well to see how little is done on the American side, even though the American number of citizens in Lebanon, I think, dwarfs that of this South American country.
And who's running that Biden administration policy? I think it's always a question worth asking as we are in this ongoing constitutional crisis where the president himself appears to be incapable of fully managing the job. So is that the reason I think that's relevant is because it speaks to what could happen in a potential Harris administration. So do you have thoughts on that, Dr. Parsi, and just how even?
I wish I had a good answer to you on that question. It has been increasingly mysterious over the last couple of months, I would say, particularly given some of the incomprehensible decisions. And it goes back all the way to what we saw, for instance, in December 2023, on the 2-month anniversary of October 7th, the White House issuing a statement only mentioning the Israeli victims, no word at all about the more than, at the time, about 20,000 Palestinians who had been killed. How is it even possible to make an oversight of that kind, particularly mindful of the fact that only weeks earlier, the administration was doing outreach to the Arab and Muslim communities because of the uncommitted vote had actually gotten a lot of momentum, and they recognized that they needed to do something about it. And then they issue a statement like that. So this is just continuous, and it's just intensifying the mystery.
Yeah, I saw a clip this morning where Joe Biden was asked, a reporter yelled to him a question about Israel's strikes in Yemen, and he seemed to misunderstand and think they were talking about literal labor strikes and started talking about collective bargaining agreements, which, listen, anyone can mishear a question, right? But speaks to some deeper concerns we have about his capabilities and his ability to even understand what's happening in the region, let alone what the broader implications are for American interests at this point. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's always so great to hear what you have to say and your analysis of where we go from here. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.